Welcome to another IoT intro video. I'm your host Ulno, and today we will talk about Node-RED and how to use Node-RED to interface to the real world. We have here our IoT gateway. We have a couple of VMOSes here, one with a button and one just using LED. And you see here our dongle, which is connected to the Pi and shows that the IoT Empower My Own network is active. So the computer is also connected to this network. And if you have the IoT Empower gateway, then you can basically find Node-RED in a very simple way. But I will also quickly show you how you could use potentially a local Node-RED. So this movie will kind of work for both ways of installing it. So let's open a browser. And in here, type in gateway.iotempire.net. And there you get the web page. And then you can here go to Node-RED. And there's Node-RED. And the first time you log in, you have to use the username admin and the password IoT Empire. If you have a local Node-RED running, then you should probably have some kind of terminal where you see that. So in Windows or in Linux, you can have a local Node-RED. And you would find your local Node-RED on localhost port 1180. And then usually don't have a password and you see you arrive at the same thing. But for the sake of simplicity, we will just use now the pre-installed version of Node-RED on the gateway. There's some stuff in here. So you see in Node-RED you usually have flows, but I will start with a new flow so that you can see how to start with an empty Node-RED. And the typical hello world in Node-RED is using a debug node as an output and an inject node as an input. And as you see, Node-RED is kind of a visual programming environment. So we can take this here and then make a connection. So the inject basically makes, as you see, a timestamp. One of the huge advantages of Node-RED is that it actually has a lot of documentation built in. So you see all these little symbols up here, and there one of these symbols is actually the help symbol. And there you can see for each of these template nodes you have here on the left, you get very nice documentation that I highly recommend you to read. But so at the moment we just want to use this inject node and the debug node, and then we want to here switch to the debug view. This is empty, as you see. And at the end, when you have designed something in Node-RED, you always want to press deploy. If you work with several people on a Node-RED instance, there's sometimes merge conflicts. So always make sure if you work with several people that people work in different flows. Yeah? So everybody should have their own flow that they work in. If you want, you can double click on this and say, oh, this is actually Ulno's flow, and give it names so that you reduce the number of potential merge conflicts. So then you press deploy. As I'm alone, no problems here. So now if I press on the timestamp, you see I get kind of a weird number here. If you want to change something, you double click on a node, and then you can change things here. So instead of a timestamp, we want to just see now a string, and the string should be hello Node-RED. So if I do that and deploy this, and now I press on the inject node, I get as a message here my hello Node-RED. So that is the simplest Node-RED program that you can actually build. But let's make it a little bit more complex. So one of the things you can do with the inject node is you can give it a repeat. So you can basically say every 2 seconds, I want hello. And so if you do that, you will see after a while, there's always a new Node-RED coming. So if you want to build a timer or a loop, that is actually the way to go. But as it's slightly annoying, I want to not do this anymore. So you can either disable the node or remove that. It actually happens in an interval. So deploy. And here in the debug view, you also can just clean all the messages so that we are free from clutter. So you know Node-RED is an integration tool. You can do a lot of things locally, but you can also integrate different components. And by default, we have components like MQTT and web requests available. So if you search here for MQTT or scroll down, you see we have MQTT inputs and we have MQTT outputs. or these are basically MQTT subscribers, and these are MQTT publishers. Then you also have requests. So you have here a web request. So with this, you can also actually communicate with a web server to trigger things or actually receive, to receive some responses. But in this class, we will mainly work with MQTT. So, and as I have prepared hardware here, we can actually connect directly to the hardware. But for seeing that there's actually hardware connected, I will quickly go to our IoT gateway and switch to IoT, and I will just listen to everything here. And as you see, there's a button here which actually sends in a while that release, and then we see also there's this LED connected. Basically, these are the two devices we see here. There's the button which auto updates that it's actually empty, and it also here that the LED is switched off shows. But I press a couple of times and then we should see actually in the on the terminal that I pressed the button a couple of times. So basically this is what I want to listen for in the Node-RED. So let's take this button 1, which is the topic. We copy that and put it here into the topic. So usually you also have to set up the MQTT broker. So then you have to click on this. If this is not yet predefined, it's predefined on the IoT Empower gateway. So here you have to put in the IP of your MQTT server, which might be your local computer or another gateway. But as you see, everything here is pre-configured. So we don't have to edit this. So I just put in here the topic it listens to, and I now take the topic and wire it here to our debug. Then this I haven't used yet. And now I deploy. And let's press the button. So I will press it now. And if we go to the screen, we see there. I press it again, and then you see it again. And kind of the repeated messages that come in between, you can see as kind of a heartbeat that the device actually reports that it is still alive. So now we want to actually, based on this, toggle the LED, or let's first just turn on the LED, and when we release the button again, we turn it off. So we need an MQTT output. Move this to the side. We can also cut the connections here. We don't want to debug anymore. You can also turn off the debugger here, but let's just make a direct connection and debug only when we need it. And so here, let's check the terminal again. See, there's leads, and LED 1 is where it reports. And I just know, because I programmed this device, that it needs a set topic to set it. So we actually do here set behind it. And yeah, this gives me released and pressed, but this one's on and off, so we have to translate this. Now take a switch node that decides if this thing is on or off, and wire the output of this in here. And then we say, hey, if this is actually passed, then it should go on output 1, and if it's released, we want to come out on output 2. And see, and now we can take a change node and put it here. And we call this here, just call it set off, and it basically just sets things to off. And you can cut and copy this, so we have another set off, but this one we will call set on. And then we just send this through, and this basically translates for us pressed to, does it do this? Pressed to on and released. Pressed to off and released to on. Okay. So if you now look at the LED, it's on because it's released. So if I press it down now, it should go off. See? And if I release it, it goes on. So now we need some kind of toggle function in here. And that's actually not so easy. So usually my students do a function. And then in the function you can do some JavaScript and have a global environment. However, there are predefined toggle functions that you can find in the net. And this is this one here. So I can basically now say, okay, each time this guy does a pressed, which is the first one, then it should toggle. And what is also important is we only want to get the first pressed signal in there. So we don't want to toggle all the time when we press down. So for this we need another one, which is called filter. And the default function of the filter is just to leave through only one of the same type. So it only when and actually this is wrong. So we have to have the filter before this. We take the filter here. That basically means only when press switches to released, it sends this here to the switch. And then the switch here will actually only let through the first one, goes into the toggle. And then the toggle should give us our strings, or will just give us true and false. Don't know if this converts directly. I think it might. Let's try to send them both in here, but I might have to transform them. I actually don't remember if it automatically turns true into 1 and false into 0. But let's see if that potentially works. Let's see what happens if we press the button. Okay, I think I have to convert the signals. Let's do a conversion. Can I really not change that into something? Okay, then I have to make a decision here. Need another let me debug first. I forgot what comes out here. So let's see what comes out of the upper one. Let's remove that and press the button a couple of times. Okay. So we basically just get true here out to the upper one, and they falls out of the lower one. This is very good. So we can basically have here our off and set the value to off. And we have another one with on. Then we put this in here. And first one to on, the second one to off. Let's hope it works now. That's pretty, okay. I press and it turns on and off, on and off, on and off. And so built in a full integration in Node-RED to turn the LED. I think that is a very short introduction. So you see already some networking functionality. There are other pieces that you can install in Node-RED to connect to different things than MQTT and just the normal web request. So in Node-RED you can search in the palette for other modules, but we can do that at a different time. So I think you have now all the basics to get started in Node-RED. Enjoy, read the manuals, and see you soon.